So I've been playing a lot of this game recently called Death's Gambit. Really, really loving it so far. It's a really cool 2D action RPG with a lot of Souls-like elements. And Souls-like games for me, for the most part, have been very intimidating. When they first came out initially, I stayed away from them. I didn't want anything to do with them because I felt like I wasn't there yet in terms of like the kind of challenging experience that I hear those games offer. I'm a little older, I'm a little wiser, and I might want to jump in. So today I'm trying to find out what game, if I could only pick one, is the game I should play.
If you could only play one of them, and you want to know what the deal is with Dark Souls stuff, you should play Dark Souls, you dummy. Yeah. What are you doing? Like, I know you will have a different opinion than me, and you have a decent opinion. But if you're getting into Souls-like stuff, and it maybe is a genre that you're interested in looking at later on and doing a bunch of other stuff with, I think it's important to maybe go back to the original, because then you can appreciate all the changes that happen in the other things. You can see in Death's Gambit, the way they handle health is sort of similar to Dark Souls, but a little different, and I don't think you appreciate those differences without seeing the original roadmap. I mean, really, I could be telling you to go play Demon's Souls, right? But
no one should.
Once you know Demon's Souls is fine. It's fine. There's some cool stuff in there, but once you know that roadmap and you can see where all the different paths in each game diverge, I think there's a lot of value there, and I think it will actually help you appreciate something like Death's Gambit. I think it's important. Know your history, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
I think that while Dark Souls is a fine game, I think that it's still very far removed from kind of what Souls has become. I think Bloodborne was the definitive, like, this is the best way to experience this. One of the great things about Bloodborne is it ups the speed. It's just a much faster game than any of the Dark Souls prior, and you can see when they made Dark Souls 3, they were very much like, oh, we should borrow this fast-paced feeling that we got from Bloodborne. I tried to get into Demon's Souls when it came out, like back in like 2009, I think, when that game came out. And from Demon's Souls to Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, I tried, and I was like, there's something about this that's saying play me, but it just felt too punishing. Bloodborne has this really cool mechanic where if you get attacked by an enemy, if you quickly retaliate, you can gain some of that health back. And instead of feeling like I was being punished, I felt like I was being incentivized to jump in further.
See, I like that.
So it encourages you to take more risks in certain ways. I think it's a very valid criticism of Dark Souls to say that the first time you play through, there's a tendency to be like, I have a shield, I have a sword, I'm gonna hold up my shield, wait until some other dude gets tired, and then whack him a few times. And that's definitely not the best way to play Dark Souls. I think in Dark Souls you should hold your weapon with two hands, or learn to parry and get into the tougher parts of it.
And it taught me to
it's good.
It taught me to go back and play Dark Souls 1 and 2 better. Like, it told me to learning to take risks in Bloodborne got me so comfortable with like the mechanics and the fluidity of like how you move from two-handed to having dual weapons. It allowed you to familiarize yourself with not only the mechanics, but also like getting over the biggest hurdle is just getting over dying. And like when you lose like souls or blood or whatever the thing is for whatever Soulslike that you're playing, you need to, like, the biggest hurdle for me was always like just being comfortable with like losing 50,000 credit, and so Bloodborne just eases you into all of that a little bit better, so that when you can come to a Dark Souls or Dark Souls 2 or even 3, you are more aware of how you feel about Souls games.
So from the little I've seen of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, the one thing I do appreciate about the gameplay from what I can tell so far is that it does incentivize you to be more offensive. And I'm much more of an offensive sort of player when it comes to the combat. And hearing that about Bloodborne makes me interested, because Death's Gambit does the same thing, where it sort of rewards you for being a little bit more aggressive with the way you play, and I love that.
So I will say that one of the things I think Dark Souls does better than Bloodborne is the fact that Dark Souls allows you, at least to a greater extent, maybe not to the biggest, bestest, most absurd extent, to create different characters and try a lot more different play styles. I think in Bloodborne, which is like super fun and I like it a lot, the pace and play style of Bloodborne tends to stay the same from playthrough to playthrough. In Dark Souls, you can make magic builds, you can try, like especially in Dark Souls 2, you can have, when I started Dark Souls 2, the first time I played it, I had like just a longsword. By the end of that game, I had 2 whips that I could wield in like a weird power stance, and they were poisoned, so I would go into PvP and I would like whip people with that and like maybe toss out some pyromancy or something. Or in certain cases, like when you watch speedrunners do Dark Souls, a lot of what they'll do, at least in certain routes or ways that the game is built, they'll pour all their stats into intelligence or whatever, and they'll run up to bosses, especially in Dark Souls 1, the way that they've done some of the builds in those speedruns. They'll just wave a wand and hit somebody with a crystal burst of magic, and that boss is dead, and it's so cool.
That's kind of cool.
So I think maybe you don't start with Dark Souls, Paul. I see where your mind is going. But if you go to Dark Souls, I think one of the things that you'll find very rewarding about Dark Souls is the fact that you have a chance the second time you play through, or even halfway through your other playthrough, if you really want to find ways to reallocate your stats, to try something different, to experience this world differently. And then the only other thing I'll say really in Dark Souls defense is the world design's cool. Is the way that they people make a big fuss about everything being much more connected in that world, but I think it's worth making a fuss over, in the sense that it's like Bloodborne's interesting, but it's not always as interconnected. I like the feel of Dark Souls too, so customize your character a little bit more, really feel like you're in a place. There.
Yeah.
That's my new counter proposal against this thought crime that's happening right now.
I think that it's interesting you talk about the design of Dark Souls being something that you honestly prefer over Bloodborne. I think that Dark Souls for me is very, both of them are like ye olde times, right?
Yeah.
But Dark Souls is like pretty standard medieval design, and Bloodborne is like this gothic, very unique feeling and looking game. I think Bloodborne, in terms of like Yharnam, has become like this thing that even if you haven't played Souls games, you've heard of Yharnam, and like that world I think is a little bit more memorable than Dark Souls, mainly just because Dark Souls is very just like, this is medieval fantasy. There's dragons, there's like zombie characters, there's ghost witches,
Yes.
whereas Bloodborne has like farmers that are like twisted by the darkness or whatever. I do agree that Dark Souls does allow you to switch things up and really play like totally differently. Bloodborne, I went back to do New Game Plus, and fortunately the DLC does add bows and arrows, so if you get like the complete package there is that added element of like a completely different weapon type. But also the cool thing about Bloodborne is, yes, it may not have like this kind of blanket like play any style you want, but the weapons are very unique.
They're cool. They're super cool.
And you find your favorite, and yeah, that does mean like you're not like constantly maybe trying out different stuff, but like I forget what my weapon of choice was, but it was this one that was like a sword that was pretty quick, and then you could put it in its scabbard, which was just a bigger sword, and that allowed for like a lot heavier attacks.
Sounds kind of cool.
God dang it.
Sounds kind of cool.
You're winning him over. This is bullshit.
And you were wearing the glasses and everything to try and convince him.
Hey man, like, you should play Dark Souls.
But so I think that people have their favorite weapons from Bloodborne, and yeah, you're not, I didn't really return to the Sword Cleaver or any of these other things, but like that's because I loved this weapon so much, and it allowed me to really like master it.
I loved the little that we played on stream a while back of Dark Souls Remastered.
Dark Souls, yeah.
Yeah, because I loved the sort of intricate way in which the world sort of constantly fucks with you, and I kind of appreciate
we were
that.
in Sense Fortress, and
Which is-
I was rusty,
Sure,
and that's
sure.
just pendulums
Yeah.
and hits and giant snake men.
But it was
and
fun
poison
to
traps.
it was fun to see you play that since you are very familiar with that game and you knew where to like sidestep someone or like engage somebody. That was fun to see. Like I can appreciate the road to getting to that place, and I think I'm more of like it's the journey kind of gamer as opposed to like the end result. So I am still split between the two games only because, and I'm going to throw a wrench in here just to make it more interesting, but I don't necessarily love both settings. Like you mentioned before, the Bloodborne is a bit more gothic and Dark Souls is more medieval or whatever, which makes me more interested about Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, only because it's set in like feudal Japan, and I'm definitely more into that vibe.
Well, Paul,
There's a little game.
let us
Yeah.
tell you about the secret third option that we that you just so
What's
thankfully
behind
let
all
us segue
three?
to. Nioh. You could play Nioh.
Yes,
You
you
want to
could.
play an awesome samurai game that's really worthwhile, and hold on, camera. Well, everybody, I'm just tell you right now, plays better than Bloodborne. It's Nioh. Nioh is
Yeah.
fantastic. It came out last year, kind of in February. I had the wonderful pleasure of reviewing it. It kind of mixes really magical Eastern settings with a little bit more historical stuff, like you're meeting Hattori Hanzo and like all these different characters. And then also it has this interesting mechanic, because we were talking about how Bloodborne's mechanic kind of made the combat fresh there. It has this thing where after you do attacks that eat up your stamina, you get a little flash of your ki, your energy, and if you time it right, you can press a button and get a lot of your stamina back. So a lot of the combat ends up being this weird maneuver game of dashing over here, hitting someone, resetting, maybe dashing out, dashing back, going in, timing it right. And it has a really great cadence to it. It's really, really cool.
I really love Nioh, and I think that's a totally valid option, especially because even with Bloodborne, that is kind of like the standalone thing, because it is made from Software. It's very hard to not view it as like a spin-off in a way of Dark Souls. Nioh has a story that is, it's telling the tale of this character and everything that's happening with him, whereas Dark Souls and Bloodborne, for better or for worse, are very interpretive. Like, the story is what you make of it, which is something I honestly, still in defense of Bloodborne, I do kind of like, because for me, it's about the gameplay, and the design is like, and the story is kind of second, so I can like throw on a podcast and like zone out and just play and listen to, a podcast. Whereas like with Nioh, that's not, you have to focus on that story and where it's going. But I do absolutely agree that it's fast paced like Bloodborne. It has the story, it has the try out a bunch of different weapons. Like, it just takes like it really has refined that genre, I think, in a very interesting way. And like you said, the setting is really cool and super unique. That being said, though, is there a part of you that maybe is thinking, just wait for Sekiro?
Kind of.
Because I'm also saying secret fourth option
It's just
is just waiting for
Just-
that game.
cool your jets,
Yeah.
play a little bit of Death's Gambit, and then when Sekiro comes out, it's gonna be I can't wait for that goddamn
Yeah.
game.
If you want to get like the Souls experience, and like you maybe even just want to do one game that is like, I've done it, I've played a Souls game,
Yeah.
I've done it, I never fucking have to do that. Oh, can I swear on this?
Of course you can.
Okay, I've never fucking have to play this again. Then I still stand by Bloodborne. But I think that if you're not concerned about that, Nioh is kind of a best of both worlds option.
Only downside to Nioh is that it's tough. It's a
Yeah.
hard game.
Yeah.
Like Bloodborne and Dark
Do you think
Souls, I
it's
think
a-
are really learnable, but
You think
Nioh's
so?
hard.
You think that Nioh is a more difficult game than Dark Souls?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think it's the hardest of all the Souls games?
I don't-
And let's not count Demon Souls, because that's hard for completely different reasons.
I don't know. I would have to think about it. I think once you get into
Let's
like,
play them all.
I guess we could, but like once you get into 2D stuff, like you're doing Death's Gambit, and I had trouble playing that. So like Salt and Sanctuary, you could just
Yeah.
play Salt and Sanctuary. There's all sorts of
And
shit
I
you
was
can
go-
play.
and I
And
was
there's so
gonna bring-
much.
And I was going to bring that up. It's really interesting because I've been playing Hollow Knight recently, and I've been playing Dead Cells as well, which I think, neither of those games would necessarily exist the way that they do now without something like Dark Souls.
Exactly.
And so when you say like a Souls-like experience, like it's expanded from this 3D action adventure genre to 2D platforming. So, I think there's a lot of options available to you. I think play Bloodborne is still my definitive stance.
I think play the original still.
So just play all of them.
Just play all
There's
of
a lot.
them
There's a
is
lot of
the
good stuff out there.
answer
It's really good.
to
Yeah.
this question.
All right, I guess I'll just play all of them.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, cool. I'm glad
Great.
I'm glad we got that
Thanks.
settled for you.
Thanks for checking out the video. Let me know what you think, who you think had the better argument. Should I play Dark Souls? Should I play Bloodborne? Should I play something we didn't even talk about today? Let me know down below in the comments. And tune into Viewpoints every Tuesday. Peace.